She didn't know how long she'd been walking. Her feet were numb, scraped and dirty. The morning air was cold, and her breath came out in little clouds as she stumbled down the cracked roadside. Her name was Hazel. She was only 7, and she was lost. The backpack she clutched to her chest had one broken strap and nothing useful inside. Just an old stuffed rabbit with one eye and a granola bar that was too stale to eat. Her hoodie was too thin. Her lips were cracked, but she didn't cry, not anymore. The tears had already run dry miles ago. She kept glancing behind her, not because someone was chasing her. That part was over. It was the silence now that scared her. The silence and not knowing where the next turn would lead. Then she saw him. A shadow moved near the tree line, quiet and slow. A large shape, Hazel, froze mid-step, her heart thudding. The figure stepped forward into the pale light. A dog, no, a German shepherd. Strong shoulders, dark fur, sharp ears. His eyes were locked on her, but there was no growl, no bark, just stillness. Hazel took a step back. The dog didn't move. "Go away," she whispered, barely louder than the wind. He stayed. She turned and kept walking. The sound of his paws came behind her, soft but steady. She glanced back again, still there, 10 feet behind, watching. Following Hazel quickened her steps. So did he. "Stop it," she said, louder now. "I don't want you here." The shepherd halted, ears up, tail low. He sat right where he was. Hazel stared. He didn't chase, didn't bark, just sat, waiting. She turned away and kept walking, shaking her head. She had bigger problems than a dog following her. She had no food, no map. No one was looking. No one ever had. But after a few minutes, she heard the soft crunch of paws again. She spun around. "Why are you following me?" she snapped. The dog didn't answer, of course, just stood there, head tilted slightly, like he was listening harder than most humans ever did. Hazel's shoulders dropped. She was too tired to yell again. "Fine," she muttered. "Do what you want." She walked on. The road curved. It led past an old fence half covered in vines. Beyond it, woods. Thick ones. Hazel hesitated. She didn't want to go into the forest. But the road stretched on and on with no sign of people, and she knew what waited behind her if she turned back. That man's voice, those angry fists, her mother pretending not to see. She stepped over the fence. The shepherd didn't hesitate. He followed her into the trees like he'd been assigned to protect her. They walked until her legs gave up. She found a cluster of bushes and crouched behind them. Her stomach growled. She took out the granola bar and chewed slowly, even though it tasted like cardboard. The shepherd sat a few feet away, eyes watching everything. Her, the trees, the wind. He didn't beg for food. He didn't inch closer. Just sat. She looked at him. "You're not like other dogs," she said. He blinked. Hazel pulled her knees to her chest. "Are you lost too?" A low whine left his throat. It didn't sound like pain, more like ... understanding. She curled up, resting her head on her backpack. The forest around them creaked and whispered. Night was still hours away, but shadows were already starting to stretch. Hazel tried not to be scared, but she was. She closed her eyes and hugged her stuffed rabbit. Then she felt fur brush her side. The shepherd had moved. He now lay beside her, close but not touching. He didn't look at her, just stared outward, body alert, as if standing guard. Hazel whispered, "You don't have to stay." He didn't move. She blinked hard, fighting tears. She hadn't felt safe in so long. And this dog, this stranger, was the first soul who made her feel like she mattered. The wind rustled the branches. Somewhere a bird cried out. Hazel didn't flinch. The shepherd was there. Hours passed. Neither of them spoke. Not that he could. But something passed between them anyway. A quiet packed dots as dusk settled over the trees. Hazel drifted into sleep. Her small hand rested near his paw. His ears twitched with every noise, but he never left her side. Not for a second. The road was behind them now. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. One girl, one dog. Both alone in the world, yet no longer alone at all. And somewhere, deep in the trees, something else was watching. Something that had been waiting. But for now, the girl and the shepherd slept, a fragile piece in a world about to shift. The next morning came too fast. Hazel woke with stiff legs and a sore neck. Her hoodie was damp with dew. She didn't remember falling asleep, but Ranger had stayed curled near her side the whole night. His body had blocked the wind. His eyes had never closed. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. "You really didn't leave," she murmured. Ranger lifted his head, but didn't move. Hazel could tell he was waiting, not just for her to stand, but for her choice. She looked down the road. It stretched out into nothing, quiet and endless. She looked the other way, back toward the town she'd left behind. She couldn't go back there. Then she turned to the woods. Thick trees, tall and dark, waited in silence. She took a step toward them. Ranger rose too, padding behind her without a sound. "I'm not going home," she whispered. "You don't have to come, Ranger." Didn't stop. The trees swallowed them quickly. Sunlight barely made it through the branches. Hazel had no idea where she was going, but the forest felt safer than anywhere else. Safer than that house. Safer than his voice. Her feet crunched over twigs. Ranger's paws made no sound. They walked for hours, deeper and deeper. Hazel only stopped once, to drink from a muddy puddle. Ranger sniffed the water, but didn't touch it. He stayed alert, always watching, like he could hear things she couldn't. "Are you looking out for me?" she asked. He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. By late afternoon, Hazel's legs began to shake. Her stomach hurt. The granola bar from yesterday was long gone. She saw a thick patch of ferns and dropped to her knees behind it. She hugged her backpack tight. Ranger circled once, then sat beside her. He didn't beg for food. He didn't whine. He just stayed. Hazel pressed her hand to her stomach. "I wish I brought something else." Ranger gently lowered his head into her lap. Hazel blinked, surprised. "You're warm," she whispered. She stroked his fur slowly. He didn't pull away. "I didn't think anyone would care," she said. "Not even a dog." Ranger licked her hand once, soft and careful. Hazel looked up at the canopy above. She didn't know what time it was, but the light had changed. Shadows were growing longer. The woods weren't silent anymore. There were distant rustles, low sounds in the leaves, the kind that make you stop breathing for a second. Hazel scooted closer to Ranger. "You hear that?" His ears twitched. His body tensed, but he didn't growl. She pressed her cheek against his side. "Don't leave, okay?" As darkness crept in, they found a place between two pine trees. Ranger dug at the dirt a little before lying down. Hazel slid beside him and used her backpack as a pillow. She pulled her hoodie tighter and wrapped her arms around her stuffed rabbit. But what really helped wasn't the rabbit. It was Ranger's steady breath beside her. The forest made strange noises that night. Once, Hazel heard what sounded like a whistle far off, high and soft. She held her breath. Ranger stood up and stared in the direction of the sound, ears up, tail stiff. She whispered, "What is it?" Ranger didn't move. He stood guard until the noise faded. Then he lay back down. Hazel barely slept the night before, but now her eyes grew heavy. For the first time in days, the tightness in her chest loosened just a little. She whispered, "You're different from other dogs." Ranger shifted slightly, his side brushing against her arm. "My dad had a dog once," she said, "but he ran away, just like Dad did." Silence again. Hazel rolled onto her side, facing Ranger. "You're not gonna run, are you?" He looked at her, eyes calm and steady. She pulled her rabbit close. "Good." Ranger yawned, then rested his chin on the ground. His body formed a gentle curve around hers, like a shield, as Hazel closed. Her eyes, the forest noises faded. Her breathing slowed. For the first time in what felt like forever, her hands didn't shake. Her heart didn't race. She felt safe, safe in the woods. Safe with a dog she didn't know. Safer than she ever felt in that house. With that man who slammed doors and made her mom cry in the kitchen. Hazel didn't dream that night. Just quiet. Deep, deep quiet. And Ranger didn't sleep much. He stayed alert through most of the night. Every sound pulling at his ears. Every gust of wind making his nose twitch. Something in these woods wasn't right. He could feel it, smell it. But the girl was safe. That was all that mattered. When morning light touched the trees, Ranger was already awake. He nudged Hazel's arm gently. She blinked, groggy but calm. "You stayed." Ranger gave a soft huff, then stood up, stretching his back legs. Hazel sat up slowly. Her stomach ached worse than before, but she didn't complain. "We need to find food," she said, "and water." Ranger looked toward the east. Then he stepped forward, glancing back once, waiting. Hazel rose to her feet, brushing leaves from her pants. "Okay," she whispered. "Lead the way." And just like that, the girl and the dog disappeared deeper into the trees. Two shadows, moving as one, into a forest full of secrets they weren't ready for. Not yet. If you feel connected to this story, please like, share, and let know your city or country below. Hazel followed Ranger through the trees, her legs sore and her throat dry. The morning air felt heavier than before, like something thick was hiding between the branches. She didn't speak, neither did he. But they both knew something was different. They walked until the trees thinned just enough to let a little light in. That's when Hazel noticed the first footprint. It wasn't hers, and it definitely wasn't a paw print. It was bigger, deeper. A man's shoe, maybe, but only one, like someone had been limping. She crouched beside it, heart thudding. "Ranger," she whispered. He sniffed the print, then lifted his head fast. His ears shot up, his body stiffened. "Is someone here?" she asked. He growled low, almost under his breath. It wasn't loud. It wasn't meant to be. It was a warning. Hazel stood slowly, eyes darting through the trees. "Let's go." They walked faster now, moving around rocks and ducking under branches. Hazel's backpack bounced against her back. Ranger stayed close to her side, never straying too far. Suddenly, a branch cracked, not behind them, but to their right. Hazel froze. "Did you hear that?" Ranger spun, teeth bared. Another crack. Then silence. Hazel grabbed his fur. Her fingers clutched so tight they shook. "Someone's there," she whispered. "I know it." Ranger moved in front of her, staring into the trees. His body blocked hers completely. She crouched behind him. Then laughter, not loud, not playful, faint, soft, wrong. Hazel covered her mouth. "That's not funny," she whispered to no one. The laughter stopped. Ranger growled again, louder now, stepping forward just once. Hazel grabbed his fur again. "No," she begged. "Don't leave me." He stopped. They stood like that for a long moment, Hazel shaking, Ranger silent but ready. Nothing moved. Then something ran through the trees, fast. Hazel didn't see it, just the blur of movement in her side vision. She turned, too late. It was gone, she whispered. "Is it following us?" Ranger didn't respond. He just started walking again, slow and careful. Hazel followed without question. After a while, they found a large fallen log. Hazel crawled under it and sat down. She pulled her knees to her chest, trying to breathe slower. "Who else is out here?" she asked. Ranger stood at the edge of the log, staring into the woods. His ears twitched at every tiny sound. Hazel looked down at the dirt beside her. There were scratches, not claw marks, not natural lines, letters someone had carved into the bark. She brushed the dirt off with her hand. It read, "He watches at dusk." Hazel backed away fast. She looked at Ranger, who did that. He didn't move. A wind rushed through the trees, too cold for daytime. Hazel hugged herself. She thought about home, about the yelling, the locked door, the footsteps that made. Her stomach twisted. This was different, but still wrong. "We have to keep going," she said. Ranger waited for her to stand before moving forward again. As they walked, Hazel kept turning her head. She swore she heard footsteps behind them, but every time she looked, the forest stood still. Too still. Then she saw it. High in a tree, tied with string, was a small doll. It hung from a branch, spinning slowly. Hazel stopped. "What is that?" She stepped closer. It was dirty, its eyes scratched out. Its clothes were sewn with tiny red stitches, uneven and messy. Ranger growled. Hazel stepped back quickly. Okay, we're leaving." They turned and kept walking. After 20 more minutes, they found a clearing with a patch of soft moss. Hazel dropped to her knees, breathing hard. "I don't like this place," she whispered. "It's not just trees anymore. Something's watching us." Ranger sat beside her, eyes fixed on the woods. His ears kept flicking. Hazel took off her backpack and dug through it. Still nothing, just the stuffed rabbit. She sighed. "Guess it's just us." Then she heard it again, laughter. But this time it was closer. Hazel stood fast. "Who's there?" she shouted. "Stop it." Nothing. She turned in a circle. Trees, 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 then movement. Something darted between trunks, fast and hunched. Hazel screamed, "Show yourself." Ranger barked, loud, sharp, angry. The forest echoed with it, and then silence again. Hazel grabbed Ranger's collar. "Let's run." They didn't walk anymore. They ran. Branches scratched her arms. Her feet slipped on roots. Ranger stayed ahead of her, leading her but never getting too far. They didn't stop until they reached a small ridge. Hazel collapsed on her knees, panting. "What is this place?" she cried. "Why does it feel like a trap?" Ranger walked to the edge of the ridge, nose up, scanning. Hazel wiped her face. "Do you think they're still following?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. She looked up at the darkening sky. Dusk, that's what the carving said. He watches at dusk. Hazel whispered, "Who's he?" Ranger stood firm, tail low, body tense. He growled again. The growl said everything. Whoever or whatever was out here with them. It wasn't done yet. It was getting closer, and it knew exactly where they were. Hazel didn't sleep much that night. The strange laugh, the footprints, the whisper in the woods. It all kept replaying. In her head, morning came, but the fear didn't leave. Her lips were dry, her throat burned. She hadn't had real water in 2 days, and the puddle yesterday wasn't enough. She needed to find something, anything. Ranger walked ahead as always, nose low. To the ground, he paused every few steps, listening. Hazel followed close behind, her eyes scanning every corner of the woods. Eventually, they heard it, a trickling sound, water. Hazel's eyes lit up. "Do you hear that?" Ranger didn't respond, but his ears twitched. He moved faster, and Hazel ran to catch up. They followed the sound until they reached a shallow stream, cutting through the forest floor. It wasn't much, but it was moving and clear. Hazel dropped to her knees, cupped her hands, and drank it. Tasted cold, clean. She drank again, then splashed her face, breathing easier. Ranger stood beside her, but didn't drink. His eyes stayed fixed on the trees across the stream. Hazel looked up. "Why aren't you drinking?" He didn't even glance her way. "Ranger." He moved in front of her, blocking her from the opposite side. His body stiffened. Then came a growl, low and steady. Hazel stood slowly. "What is it?" He took a step forward, placing himself between Hazel and the trees across the water. That's when she saw the river, just past the stream, was a wider body of water, dark, slow to still. A fallen tree lay across it like a bridge. Hazel started, walking toward it. "Maybe there's food over there," she said. Ranger ran ahead and blocked her path. Hazel frowned. "What? It's just water." Ranger growled again, louder this time. Hazel took a step to the side. He moved with her, always staying in front. She sighed. "We have to cross. We can't stay here forever." Ranger's ears flicked. Then he looked, past her toward the trees behind. Hazel turned, heart pounding. Crack. A branch broke, not from the wind. From weight, she backed up. "No, not again." Ranger snarled now, full voice, staring at the woods. Then something flew through the air, a stone, and landed inches from Hazel's foot. She screamed. "That didn't fall," she cried. "Someone threw that." Ranger lunged forward, barking like thunder. The trees ahead rustled. Hazel didn't see anyone, but she could feel it. They weren't alone. "Who's there?" she yelled. "Stop following me." No answer, just the wind. Ranger barked again, running toward the sound, but only for a second. He stopped at the riverbank and wouldn't cross. His feet dug into the dirt. Hazel stood frozen. "Why won't you go?" He barked once, short and sharp. Then he turned back to her, eyes pleading. Hazel looked at the river again. It didn't move like it should. The surface barely rippled. It was too quiet, and there, just below the water, something floated. Hazel stepped closer, squinting. It was a backpack, small, purple, faded from sun and water. It looked like a kid's. Hazel's stomach dropped. She whispered, "That looks like mine." Ranger growled behind her, low and warning. Hazel stepped back. "What is this place?" she said. Why are there things like mine out here? Ranger didn't answer, but the look in his eyes, it was fear. Suddenly more rustling from behind. Hazel spun around. Come out, she shouted. Why are you doing this? Silence. Then another rock hit the water. Ranger barked again, louder than before, and Hazel felt her heart race. She grabbed his fur. Don't let them take me, she whispered. He stood in front of her, teeth bared. The forest stayed quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of quiet that meant someone was waiting. Hazel backed away from the river, keeping her eyes on the woods. She didn't try to cross again, not after the backpack, not after the stone. They moved slowly, step by step. Ranger always between her and the shadows. When they were far enough, Hazel stopped to breathe. I don't want to be here, she said. I want to go home. But there was no home to return to, not the kind where people cared. The only safe place now was next to this dog. She crouched beside Ranger and looked up at the trees. Why won't they show themselves? She asked. He stared at the river. Hazel followed his gaze. On the far side, where she'd almost crossed, something now stood in the trees, a figure, still watching. She couldn't see the face, just the shape. Ranger barked so loud the figure stepped back. Hazel stood, her whole body shaking. We have to keep moving, she said. Far away from here. Ranger led the way this time, faster now, always glancing back. And Hazel didn't ask questions. She just followed the only soul who hadn't left her behind. They didn't stop until their legs refused to carry them any farther. Hazel collapsed beneath a crooked tree, her chest heaving, her palms scraped and raw. Ranger stood beside her, still alert, still watching the path behind them. Hazel's voice trembled. Do you think they're following us? Ranger didn't respond, but his eyes stayed fixed on the woods behind them. She wiped her nose with her sleeve. Why won't they just leave us alone? Ranger circled once and lay down, keeping his head up. Hazel leaned against him, her breath slowing. The light faded fast. Darkness swallowed the forest. Hazel didn't even try to start a fire. She didn't want to be seen. She curled into a ball beside Ranger, using her backpack as a pillow. The only sound was the quiet rise and fall of his breathing and the occasional snap of a twig far in the distance. She didn't remember falling asleep, but something pulled her out of it. A sound, not loud, not sudden, a soft, slow humming. Hazel's eyes snapped open. She held her breath. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't her imagination. The tune floated through the trees, sweet but off-key, a lullaby. One she almost recognized. Almost. She sat up, slowly. Do you hear that? Ranger was already standing. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He just stood there, body stiff, tail low, and eyes wide. A deep, quiet rumble came from his throat, not for alert, but for warning. Hazel scooted closer to him. What is that? She whispered. The humming grew louder, then stopped. Total silence. Hazel's heart pounded in her ears. Then a breath, not hers, not Ranger's. A long, slow exhale, coming from just beyond the tree line. She clutched Ranger's fur. Please don't let it come closer. Ranger moved in front of her, his body low and steady. His growl deepened, the kind of sound that means don't move. Hazel could feel it. Whatever was out there wasn't human. At least, it didn't sound like one. Twigs snapped, then something passed through the dark. Not a figure, not a full shape, but a presence. She couldn't see it clearly, but she felt it. Cold, Wrong. Ranger lunged forward and barked once, loud and sharp. The sound echoed. The presence froze. Hazel whispered, "Ranger, don't go far." He stayed planted, guarding, protecting. The thing moved again, slowly, circling them. Hazel backed into the tree trunk, pulling her rabbit close to her chest. "I want to go home," she whispered. Ranger barked again, this time longer. The presence paused, then the humming returned. The same twisted lullaby. Hazel covered her ears. "Please, make it stop." She looked at Ranger, whose body was still locked in place. He was waiting for something, watching. Hazel pressed her back into the bark. "What does it want?" No answer, but the sound drifted farther away, fainter, until it vanished. Ranger stayed alert for minutes after it stopped. Only when the forest was completely still again did he sit beside her. Hazel wrapped her arms around his neck. "You scared it off." Ranger licked her hand once. She buried her face in his fur. "Thank you." But she didn't sleep after that neither. Did Ranger? They sat there, side by side, until the first pale light began to filter through the trees. Hazel didn't speak again until morning. She whispered, "That thing." It wasn't normal. Ranger didn't move. Hazel looked down at the dirt beside them. Footprints, not shoe prints, not animal tracks. Bare feet, thin, long, pressed deep into the earth. Hazel stood up fast, her hands shaking. They were right next. "To us?" Ranger barked once and looked ahead. Hazel nodded, voice trembling. "Let's get out of here." She didn't care where they were going anymore, as long as it was away from that dot, as long as she had Ranger beside her. Hazel hadn't said a word since dawn. Her eyes were tired, but not from sleep. She hadn't rested. Not really. The memory of that humming haunted her more than the cold. She followed Ranger in silence, one step behind him, just like always. He didn't look back, but she knew he was watching everything, every sound, every shadow. He always did, by midday. They reached a patch of dry grass beneath a twisted pine. Hazel dropped her backpack and sat down hard. Her legs were sore. Her hands were raw. But she didn't complain. Ranger lay nearby, panting quietly. Hazel opened the side pocket of her bag and pulled out what was left of the granola bar. It was crushed and stale, but it was something. She broke it in half and held out a piece. "I don't know if you even like this," she said, "but here." Ranger sniffed it and took it gently from her hand. He didn't gobble it, just chewed slowly. Hazel stared at him for a moment. "You've followed me for days. You've protected me. But I don't even know what to call you." Ranger tilted, his head slightly. She wiped her eyes. "You deserve a name." Her fingers brushed the side of his neck. No collar, no tag, no hint of who he'd been before her. She took a deep breath. "Ranger," she whispered, "that's what you are. That's what you've been doing for me." Ranger blinked once, then nudged her knee with his nose. Hazel smiled. "So, you like it." He lay down beside her, tail thumping once. She rested her hand on his back. "Good, because it feels right." They sat there together, quiet again. The only sound was the wind rustling the trees. Hazel leaned back and looked up at the sky. "You?" "No, when I left home, I didn't think anyone would care." Ranger lifted his head. "My mom didn't stop him," she said softly, "when he'd yell, or worse. She just stared at the wall like she didn't see me." Ranger moved closer. Hazel swallowed hard. "He told me I was a problem, that if I disappeared, no one would notice." She glanced at the woods around them. I guess he was right. Nobody's come. Ranger pressed his head into her lap. Hazel froze for a second, then slowly laid her hand on his neck. You're the only one who's stayed. She didn't cry, not fully, but her voice cracked. He slammed the door the night I left, she whispered. Didn't even ask where I was going. Ranger looked up at her, eyes calm, waiting. Hazel gave a weak laugh. You're a better listener than any grown-up I ever met. She ran her fingers through his fur. Thank you for staying. Ranger didn't move. He just breathed slow and deep, his ear flicking once as if he heard something only he could understand. Hazel looked around the woods again. I know we're not safe yet, she said. But it's not as scary with you. Her fingers traced a small scar on his side. You've been through things too, haven't you? Ranger didn't flinch. He just closed his eyes. Hazel leaned forward and rested her forehead against his fur. Don't leave me, she whispered. Please. Ranger stayed completely still. In that moment, the girl with no one and the dog, with no name, became something more than lost souls in the woods. They became each other's reason to keep going. And though the forest still watched, still whispered, it had no power over them right then, because they had each other. And now he had a name. Hazel walked slowly, her feet dragging more with each step. The air felt different now, heavier. The trees had grown closer together, and the path beneath her was more tangled than before. Ranger stayed close to her side, his eyes scanning the woods ahead. She tried to focus on the silence, on the way Ranger's steady movements kept her grounded. But something about the ground felt wrong. The way the leaves were scattered. Too perfect to still. Ranger stopped suddenly. His body blocked her path. What is it? Hazel asked. He didn't growl, didn't bark, just stared down at the dirt. Hazel stepped forward, confused. Ranger, it's okay. His snarl came so fast it made her freeze. Then his paw shot out and slammed into her leg. Not hard, but enough to knock her backward. Hey, she cried, falling into the ferns. But the second she hit the ground, she heard it. A sharp snap just in front of her. Metal clanged. A thick wire rose from the leaves, twisting like a snake. Hazel's eyes widened. A snare trap, inches from where she would have stepped. She stared at it, frozen. You saved me, she whispered. Ranger stood over the trap, his growl now fading. His tail stayed low, eyes locked on the twisted metal. Hazel crawled backward. Who would leave that out here? She asked. It could have killed me. Ranger didn't answer, but his body stayed tight, alert, like he expected more. Hazel pushed herself up, her hands shaking. That's not for animals, is it? She asked. Ranger sniffed the trap, then growled again. Hazel knew the answer. They walked further, slower. Now each step checked, each patch of leaves carefully avoided. Hazel looked down constantly, heart pounding. Then she saw something worse. Bones, a pile of them, not scattered like animal remains, but stacked, neat, clean. She stopped cold. No, Ranger didn't growl this time. He just moved in front of her, blocking her view. But Hazel had already seen it. A small sneaker beside the pile, muddy, old, torn at the toe. She dropped to her knees and threw up. Ranger stayed beside her, silent. Hazel wiped her mouth with her sleeve, her hands trembling. That was a kid, she whispered. That was someone like me. Ranger sniffed the air. His fur rose slightly. Hazel clutched his fur. We have to go now. But just as she turned, she saw it eyes, yellow eyes, blinking from the thorns beyond the bones. Not glowing, not animal, watching. Hazel couldn't breathe. Ranger, she whispered. There's someone there. He turned slowly, his teeth bared, body lowered into a protective stance. The eyes didn't blink again. They just stared. Unmoving, Hazel stepped back. Why are they watching us? She said. Why don't they say anything? Ranger growled. Louder this time, Hazel turned and ran. Branches tore at her arms. Roots tripped her feet. She didn't care. She just ran. Ranger stayed at her side, growling the whole way. They didn't stop until they reached a dry creek bed. Hazel dropped beside a rock, breathless, tears streaking her cheeks. I don't understand, she cried. Why is this happening? Ranger stood in front of her, facing the way they came. Hazel hugged her knees. What if we're walking into a trap? What if they're leading us? Ranger didn't move. She looked at him. Why would anyone leave a trap like that, where a kid could step? He didn't answer, of course. But Hazel already knew. That trap wasn't for animals. And those bones, someone had placed them there. On purpose, she whispered. I think they want us to be scared. Ranger slowly lay beside her, pressing his body against hers. Hazel reached out and touched his fur. I'm scared anyway, she whispered, but I won't leave you, not ever. They sat there in silence, the woods too quiet once again. But now Hazel knew why something or someone was keeping the forest still, and it had eyes. Eyes that didn't blink. Hazel didn't want to move. She sat with her back against a cold rock, Ranger beside her, both staring in the direction of the yellow eyes. But the eyes had vanished. No sound, no movement. Just gone, she whispered. Was it even real? Ranger didn't look at her. His eyes stayed locked on the trees, his body stiff, like he expected something to return. Hazel finally stood. We can't stay here. She adjusted the straps of her torn backpack, wiped her face, and gave one last glance toward the place where the eyes had been. Then she turned and followed the dry creek bed. Ranger followed, close behind. The forest felt tighter now, like it was closing in. Hours passed. They didn't speak, but they didn't need to. Hazel was starting to understand his silences. When he walked closer, it meant danger. When he slowed, it meant something wasn't right. And when he growled low and soft, it meant don't move. Around mid-afternoon, they reached a slope covered in moss. Hazel climbed slowly, gripping roots and rocks to steady herself. As she reached the top, she paused. There, at the bottom of the hill, something moved. A man alone. He limped badly, dragging one foot behind him. The other was bare, raw and caked with mud. No boot, just one filthy sock and torn pants. His shirt was ripped, his face hidden by a tangled beard and matted hair. Hazel ducked fast behind a tree. Her breath caught in her throat. Ranger stood beside her, stiff as stone, lips curled slightly. The man walked slowly, weaving like he was drunk or hurt or both. Hazel whispered, "Is he one of them?" Ranger didn't growl yet, but his body said wait. The man stopped suddenly. He looked around like he'd heard something. Then his head snapped in their direction. Hazel froze. He smiled, a slow, crooked smile that made her blood run cold. "Well," he rasped, voice rough like gravel. "Ain't you a gift?" Hazel's stomach twisted. She stood, ready to run, but Ranger stepped forward. The man laughed. That mutt yours. He took one step toward them. Ranger's growl turned into a snarl, loud and sharp. Hazel shouted, "Don't come any closer." The man lifted his hands. "Easy now, girl. I didn't say nothin', just lost out here." She glanced at the knife hanging from his belt. Ranger lunged, a blur of fur and teeth. He didn't bite, but he got close enough that the man stumbled back, falling into the dirt. The man cursed, scrambling to his feet. "You better keep that beast back," Hazel yelled. "Leave us alone." The man grinned again, wiping mud from his shirt. "You're out here by yourself, little girl. That's not smart." "I'm not by myself," she said. He tilted his head, eyes never leaving Ranger. "I'll be seeing you again," he muttered. Then he turned and limped off into the trees, disappearing without a sound. Hazel didn't breathe for a full minute. She whispered he had a knife. Ranger stayed where he was, staring after the man. Hazel's hands were shaking. "He'll come back, won't he?" Ranger didn't move. Hazel sat down hard on the ground, hugging her knees. "Why is this happening to us? I just wanted to get away. I didn't ask for this." She looked down the hill where the man had vanished. "I thought the woods would be quiet. I thought no one would care if I was gone. But now someone does. And he's worse than the ones I left." Ranger, finally, walked back to her and sat down. She leaned against him, her voice barely a whisper. He looked like he'd been out here a long time. She thought about the bones, the traps, the humming. Maybe he wasn't alone. Maybe there were others like him. Her voice cracked. What if he's the one who left the trap? Ranger licked her hand gently. Hazel wiped her face. "We can't stop." "Not now." They waited another hour before moving again, just to be sure he wasn't circling back. They walked for miles. Every sound made Hazel flinch. Every bird that flew up from the bushes made her heart skip. But Ranger stayed steady. Strong dot as the sun began to lower, they found a small, rocky ledge. It wasn't much, but it gave them a view of the forest below. Hazel sat and pulled out the last piece of crushed granola bar. She broke it in half and gave a piece to Ranger. "You saved me again," she said. "You always do." Ranger chewed slowly. Hazel looked at the sky. "I don't think that man is done with us." Ranger barked once, a short, deep sound. Hazel nodded. "Then we won't be done either." She looked at the scars on his side, the way he moved with silent strength. "You've been hurt before, haven't you?" Ranger didn't respond, just leaned against her. Hazel closed her eyes. She knew what it felt like to carry pain that no one asked about. She whispered, "He's not going to catch us, not while you're here." Night fell slowly, but Hazel didn't sleep. She stayed, close to Ranger, watching the woods, listening, and deep down, she knew the man with one boot was still nearby, waiting, watching, but so was Ranger. And Ranger never slept when she needed him most. Hazel's legs were shaking. They had been walking for hours, climbing through brambles and rocky trails, trying to stay ahead of the man with one boot. Her shoes were falling apart, and every step felt heavier than the last. Ranger stayed close, checking behind them every few minutes. She whispered, "Do you think he's still following us?" Ranger didn't answer, but he didn't relax either. His tail stayed low, his ears twitching at every noise. The sun was dropping fast. Trees cast long shadows, stretching across the ground like fingers. Hazel glanced up and saw something in the distance, a shape, wooden, broken. "It's a house," she breathed. Ranger ran ahead, sniffing the air. They reached it within minutes. An old cabin. The roof sagged, one of the windows was shattered, and ivy covered half the door, but it was shelter. Hazel pushed gently on the door, and it creaked open. She looked back at Ranger. Should we go in? Ranger stepped past her. First, that was enough. Inside, the air smelled like dust and old wood. Cobwebs hung from the corners. A broken chair lay on its side, and a torn blanket was bunched in one corner. Hazel closed the door behind them and leaned against it, finally, letting out the breath she'd been holding. "It's not much," she said, "but it's better than outside." Ranger walked slowly through the room, sniffing every corner. His tail didn't wag. Hazel dropped her backpack and sat on the floor. "My feet are killing me." She looked around. There was no furniture, no food, no sign anyone had been there. Recently, until she saw the wall. "Ranger," she said, standing slowly. She walked to the far side of the room. The wooden wall was covered in scratches, not from animals. From something else. She stepped closer. Names carved into the wood, small and messy. Some with dates, some just letters. She ran her finger over them. Tommy, menos 2019 CL. 2015 Sarah, minus 2012, and then one near the bottom, almost faded. Leah, 2014. Hazel's knees gave out. She dropped to the floor, staring at the name. "No," she whispered. "No way." Ranger sat beside her, head tilted. Hazel touched the carving. "That's my sister's name, Leah." She blinked fast, her voice shaking. She was only 9. One day, she just vanished. I was too little to understand, but I remember Mum crying. We looked for weeks. Cops, posters, everything. And then, it just stopped, like she never existed. She traced the name again. Leah minus 2014. That's the year she disappeared. Ranger nudged her gently with his nose. Hazel looked at him. What if this is real? What if she was here? Her hands were trembling. What if she didn't run away? What if someone brought her here? She stood up and turned to the rest. Of the room, there were more carvings, small drawings, stick figures, a flower, a sun. But one stood out. A girl with long hair, holding the hand of a smaller one. Hazel whispered, "That's us." The door creaked slightly behind them. Hazel spun around. "Did you hear that?" Ranger moved in front of her, growling low. The door didn't move again. No one was there, but Hazel's heart was pounding. She backed away from the wall and sat down. This can't be a coincidence. It just can't. Ranger rested beside her, eyes still watching the door. Hazel hugged her knees. She's been gone 8 years. We all thought she was dead. She looked at the carving again. But what if she wasn't? She sat in silence for a long time. The cabin grew darker, but Hazel didn't sleep. Her mind wouldn't let her. At one point, she looked at Ranger and whispered, "Do you think she could still be alive?" Ranger didn't move, but his eyes never left hers. Hazel pulled the blanket from the corner and wrapped it around herself. It smelled like mildew, but it helped. "I won't leave until I know," she said. "If Leah was here, then maybe others were too." She placed her hand on Ranger's head, "And we're gonna find out." Outside, the wind picked up, but inside, the old cabin held its breath, and so did Hazel. Hazel didn't sleep much in the cabin. The wind scraped at the windows, and every creak in the old wood made her jolt. Ranger stayed near the door, head on his paws, but eyes wide open. He didn't rest either. When the sun rose, soft light crept. Through the broken window, Hazel stretched, stiff and cold. Her gaze landed back on the wall, the names, the drawings, and that one word that had turned her world upside down. Liar, she whispered. She stood and ran her fingers across the carved letters again, still not believing. Her voice cracked. Why would her name be here? Ranger let out a low huff, then stood. Hazel glanced around the cabin. Something about it felt different in the daylight, less empty, more watched. She kicked gently at a broken floorboard near the wall. It shifted. Curious, she dropped to her knees and pulled it up. Dust rose into the air. Underneath, stuffed into the dark space, was something soft, a backpack, torn, small. Hazel's hands trembled as she pulled it free. The zipper was stuck at first, but after a hard tug, it gave way. Inside were scraps of old papers, a few faded candy wrappers, and then folded between two pieces of cloth, a photo. Hazel gasped. It was her and Liar from years ago. Hazel was maybe 4, sitting in her sister's lap, both smiling under a tree in their backyard. Tears filled her eyes. This is mine, this is ours. She clutched the photo to her chest. She was here, she really was here. Ranger let out a low growl behind her. Hazel looked up fast. What is it? Ranger moved to the door, tail stiff, body tense. She stood quickly, still holding the photo. Is it him? Ranger growled, louder now, not wild, but deep and steady. Hazel moved beside him and peeked through a crack in the door, down the hill, near the edge of the trees. He was back. The man with one boot. He stood just beyond the tree line, staring up at the cabin. His face twisted into that same awful grin. Hazel whispered, "He found us." Ranger's growl didn't stop. His body blocked the door now. But then Hazel noticed something else, movement behind the man. 3 more figures stepped into view, all adults, all dirty. Faces she didn't recognize, but none of them looked surprised, like they'd been expecting. This moment, Hazel's breath caught. He's not alone. Ranger barked, sharp and loud. The man didn't flinch. Instead, he took a step forward and shouted, "We saw the firelight last night." "You're not good at hiding, little girl," Hazel backed away from the door. "We didn't make a fire," she whispered. "We didn't." She looked at Ranger. His eyes met hers, and she understood. They wanted her to come here, to find the name, to feel hope, and now they were coming to take it away. The man shouted again, "We're not gonna hurt you." "But the dog, he needs to stay out of the way." Ranger barked again, louder, snapping his teeth. Hazel whispered, "What do they want?" She knew, deep down, it wasn't just about her. It never was. There were names carved into this place. Too many, some from years ago. Her voice shook. "They've done this before." She looked down at the photo again. Leah had been here. Maybe she'd hidden. Maybe she'd run. Maybe she hadn't made it out. But Hazel still could. She turned to Ranger. "We can't stay. They're gonna come up here." Ranger stepped back from the door. Hazel grabbed her backpack, shoved the photo inside, and tightened the straps. She placed her hand on Ranger's, sighed. "Lead us out. Wherever you go, I'll follow." They slipped out the back, moving fast and low. The woods behind the cabin were thick, and the hill dropped steeply. Hazel nearly lost her footing, but Ranger stayed close, guiding her around the loose rocks and fallen branches. Voices rang out from above. The group had reached the cabin. "She's gone," one of them shouted. Hazel kept running. Ranger's ears twitched. He turned, suddenly, veering left. Hazel followed without hesitation. Her chest burned, but she didn't stop. They ran until the shouts faded, when they finally paused behind a cluster of rocks. Hazel dropped to her knees, gasping. Ranger stood tall, eyes locked on the trees behind them. Hazel looked up. "You think they'll chase us?" Ranger didn't move. She wiped her face. "They want something. Maybe they collect kids. I don't know, but they're not normal." She reached into her bag and pulled out the photo again. "I can't believe it. She was so close, and I didn't know." Her voice cracked. "I won't lose like that again." She looked at Ranger, eyes full of fire. "If they took her, I'll find out. If she ran, I'll find her. But I'm not giving up." Ranger let out a quiet bark, not loud, but full of agreement. Hazel held the photo to her chest again. "Not alone," she whispered. "Not with you." Behind them, the woods stayed quiet for now, but both of them knew this wasn't over, not even close. Hazel barely slept after they escaped. Her back hurt from the rocks, her legs ached, but her mind wouldn't stop. That photo proved it. Liar had been here. And now, the people who might have taken her were hunting Hazel too. They'd circled back by mid-afternoon. Ranger led her back toward the cabin. Hazel didn't want to return, but there was nowhere else. The sun was dropping, and they needed walls, even rotten ones. As they approached Ridge Hill again, Hazel whispered, "Are you sure this is safe?" Ranger didn't stop. He just glanced. Back once, enough to let her know he'd be watching every second. Back inside the cabin, Hazel checked every corner twice. She pulled the loose floorboard back into place, hiding the photo again. Then she pushed an old crate over it. Just in case, she mumbled. Ranger stayed near the door, pacing. His body never relaxed. Hazel sat in the corner, arms wrapped tight around her legs. "They're not gonna stop, are they?" she asked. Ranger didn't answer. He just listened. The sun disappeared behind the trees. Shadows crept across the cabin floor. Then came the sound, slow crunching in the leaves outside. Hazel stood fast. "They're back," Ranger growled, deep and low. "More steps," whispered voices. "At least 3 men, maybe more." Hazel rushed to the crate and shoved it aside, yanking the floorboard open. "I'm going under." She looked at Ranger. "Come with me, please." But he didn't move. His eyes locked on the door. "Ranger, you have to hide." Still, he stood firm. He let out a short, sharp bark. Hazel's eyes filled with tears. "No, don't fight them alone." She dropped under the floor and pulled the board back into place. Just as the door creaked open, Wood groaned. Boots stepped inside. "She's here," a voice whispered. Hazel covered her mouth, trembling. A second voice spoke. "Check the back." But they didn't get far. Ranger exploded from the shadows. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He attacked. The sound was like thunder. A deep, furious snarl followed by the crash of bodies. Hazel froze under the floorboards, tears falling silently as chaos erupted above her. Men screamed. One shouted, "Get it off me." Another yelled, "He bit me." Ranger didn't stop. Hazel heard growls, crashes, the sound of something slamming into a wall. More screams, but not his. Then, suddenly, silence. She waited, breath held. The floor above her creaked again. Hazel stayed still, then soft steps, a sniff, a low huff. The board above her shifted. She slowly peeked out. Ranger stood there, chest rising fast, one leg dragging slightly. His snout was red. He limped toward her and dropped beside the floor opening. Hazel crawled out, eyes wide with horror. "Oh, my God," she whispered. "Ranger." He looked up at her and licked her hand. She wrapped her arms around him. "You stayed. You didn't let them take me." She looked around the room, one boot near the wall, blood on the doorframe, number, bodies. They had fled or crawled. Hazel pulled the old blanket down and pressed it to Ranger's bleeding leg. "You fought them off by yourself," she whispered. "You saved me again." He leaned into her, weak but steady. Tears rolled down Hazel's face. "I won't let them hurt you," she said. "I swear, Ranger. You protected me. Now it's my turn." She held him close as night wrapped the cabin in silence once again. But now something had changed. They weren't just surviving. They were fighting back, together. Hazel hadn't moved from Ranger's side since the fight. He lay next to her, leg wrapped in the blanket she'd torn into strips. His breathing was steady now, but he was tired. So tired, she whispered, "You did everything for me. Now I need to get you help." Ranger opened one eye, then rested his head back down. Hazel sat up slowly and looked around the cabin again. Her stomach growled, but there was nothing left to eat. No water, no supplies. Just an old chair, broken shelves, and dust. She walked to the back wall, brushing aside a curtain of spiderwebs. A small wooden cabinet sat low near the floor, half buried in leaves. She tugged it open. Inside was a box, cracked and covered in grime. But something about it looked hopeful. Hazel pulled it out and set it on the floor. "What are you?" She flipped the lid. Inside sat an old radio, dusty, rusted around the edges. One of the knobs had snapped off, but the wires looked whole. She glanced at Ranger. "If this works." Hazel fumbled with the dials, her fingers shaking. The moment she turned the crank on the side, a low hum filled the cabin. Static. She pressed the speaker. "Hello, hello, is anyone out there?" "Nothing." She twisted the dial again, her breath quickening. The static rose and fell, loud and crackling. Then a flicker, a voice. "This is Search Patrol 6. Repeat, Patrol 6. Searching South Perimeter. Looking for missing child. Female, estimated age." Hazel gasped. "That's me. I'm here." She held the radio closer to her mouth. "I'm Hazel Carter. I'm in a cabin on a Hillridge Hill. Please, help me." The voice continued faintly. "If you hear this message, respond with coordinates." Repeat, respond with the signal broke. Hazel hit the side of the radio. "No, no, no, come back." She turned the dial wildly. Nothing but static. Her hands trembled. "Please, don't be gone." She looked at Ranger, her voice cracking. "I heard them. They're looking for me." He lifted his head slightly. Hazel ran to the door and threw it open. "Hey," she screamed into the trees. "I'm here." Her voice echoed. "I'm not dead. I'm not missing. I'm right here." She waited. Only silence answered. Hazel stepped back inside, heart pounding. She clutched the radio like it was her lifeline. They said South Perimeter. That means they're close. That means they're not far. She turned to Ranger. "You're gonna be okay. We just have to hold on." But then something shifted outside. A flick of light in the darkness. Hazel froze. Through the cracks in the wall. She saw it, a small orange flame, a match. Someone had lit a match. Just beyond the trees. She whispered, "No." Another light flickered. To the right. Then one more to the left. 3 flames now. Not rescue, not patrol. Hazel stepped back. They heard me. Ranger tried to stand. He growled, low and rough. "No," she whispered. "You need to rest." She turned off the radio, shoving it back into the box. "I messed up. I was too loud." They heard everything. The match. Flames stayed still, waiting. Hazel backed toward Ranger and crouched beside him. "We can't run, not tonight." She pulled the crate toward the door and braced it against the frame. "I'll protect you now," she whispered. "You saved me. Now it's my turn." She reached into her backpack and pulled out the photo again. The one of her and Laya. "I'm not giving up," she said. "Not on her, not on you." Outside, the flames still burned, and Hazel sat in the dark, holding on to hope and the one thing that had never left her side. Hazel sat in the dark beside Ranger, her back against the cabin wall. Outside, the match flames had vanished, but the fear hadn't. She clutched the photo of Laya in one hand, the other resting on Ranger's back. His breathing had steadied, but he was weak. Too weak, too weak. "Run, if it came to that," she whispered. "We can't wait forever." Ranger gave a soft whine, eyes half closed. Hazel stood and stepped lightly across the room, scanning for anything, a hiding spot, an exit, a way out if they came back. Her eyes landed on a corner of the cabin floor, behind the old shelf. The wood looked different there, dusty but newer. She knelt down and pushed at the edge. It didn't budge. She leaned harder. The floor creaked then. Suddenly, a small metal ring popped loose from the dust. Hazel stared at it. A handle. She looked back at Ranger. "There's something here." She gripped the ring and pulled. The wooden square lifted with a groan, revealing a dark opening beneath the cabin. Cold air rushed up. Hazel coughed. "It smells awful." Ranger stood shakily, walked over and stared down into the hole. The fur on his back stood up. He growled, low and steady. Hazel peered down, a ladder. Below that, dirt walls. A tunnel. She glanced at Ranger. "You don't want me to go down there, do you?" He growled again, louder now, and backed away. From the opening, Hazel hesitated. Someone built this. A long time ago. She looked down again, heart pounding. She had to know. She pulled the flashlight from her bag, clicked it on, and took the first step down. Ranger barked once, not a warning, a plea. "I'll be back," she whispered. "I promise." The ladder creaked under her weight, but it held. She reached the bottom and turned slowly, her light shaking in her hand. The tunnel stretched ahead, narrow and damp. The walls were lined with jagged scratches, some fresh, some faded. She walked forward, brushing spiderwebs from her face. Then she saw it, words carved deep into the dirt wall by fingers. Not tools, not paint, just nails. "Don't trust the man in green." Hazel stepped back. Her voice came out in a whisper. "The man with one boot. He wore green." She kept moving, slower now, her breath shallow. Then she saw something on the ground, a pile of cloth, torn, dirty, small. Hazel dropped to her knees and lifted one of the shirts, and there, tucked beneath it, was a bracelet. Purple beads, a little silver heart in the center. Hazel gasped. No. She picked it up with shaking fingers. I gave this to her. I gave this to Leah when I was 5. Tears filled her eyes. She was here, she whispered. She was here. Hazel looked around the tunnel, heart hammering. If this is where they brought her, where did she go? The tunnel went farther, but something inside her said to stop. She turned and hurried back to the ladder. Ranger was waiting, pacing near. The trapdor. When Hazel climbed out, she dropped the bracelet beside him. He sniffed it, then looked at her. She didn't run away, Hazel said, voice thick. They took her, just like they tried to take me. She pressed the bracelet to her chest. We're getting out of here, she said. And when we do, we tell someone everything. She looked at Ranger, who stood tall despite the pain in his leg. And if she's still out there, we'll find her. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. The forest had been hiding something all along, but now Hazel knew. And she wasn't going to hide anymore. Hazel didn't sleep after finding the bracelet. She couldn't. Her mind raced with questions. How long had it been buried there? Had Leah been trapped beneath this cabin? Had she escaped? Or worse, Ranger lay beside her, his head resting on her foot. He was still limping, but his strength had returned enough to sit alert. Watching the door, Hazel whispered, she wore this every day. I made it from my birthday kit. I remember begging her not to lose it. She rolled the silver heart between her fingers. A chill crawled through the floor. Hazel looked at the trapdoor. I need to go back down, she said. There's more. I can feel it. Ranger wind, nudging her leg, but didn't stop her. Hazel grabbed the flashlight, slung her bag over her shoulder, and lifted the board. She looked back at Ranger. Stay, I need to do this. Then she climbed down into the tunnel again. The air was colder now, still, like the ground itself was holding its breath. She moved carefully, deeper into the passage. Every few feet, she stopped to listen, but the silence was crushing. Hazel's voice broke through it, soft and slow. She began to hum a tune only one person in the world would know. The lullaby Leah used to sing every night before they fell asleep, back when things were simple, before everything fell apart. Hazel kept walking, humming through the fear. Then, out of nowhere, she heard it, a second voice, weak, cracked, but humming back. Hazel froze. Hello. Silence. Then again the voice trembling but trying. Hazel ran. The tunnel bent sharply, and there, hunched against the wall in the dark, was a girl, pale, dirty, thinner than Hazel remembered. But the eyes, those were the same. Hazel dropped to her knees. Leah, the girl blinked. Her lips parted. Hazel. Her voice was dry and scratchy, like it hadn't spoken in days. Hazel reached for her. It's me. It's really me. Leah coughed. I thought you were a dream. Hazel held her tight, tears falling. You're not alone anymore. I found you. Leah's body shook in her arms. He took us, she whispered, one by one, said no one would come. But I remembered your song. I kept humming. I thought maybe you'd hear it. Hazel pulled her closer. I did hear it. I wanted to go home, Leah sobbed, but I didn't know how. Hazel wiped her face. You're coming with me, I swear it. Suddenly, a bark. Ranger, loud, frantic. Hazel's heart sank. No, the bark came again, this time desperate. Hazel looked back, toward the tunnel. He's coming, isn't he? Leah's voice trembled. The man in green. He always finds the ones who Try to run. Hazel stood, pulling Leia to her feet. Not this time. They moved fast. Hazel supporting her sister with one arm, the flashlight barely lighting the way. Ranger's barks grew louder, faster. Hazel shouted, "We're coming." From behind them, a sound echoed, not barking, not words, footsteps, slow. Dragging. Hazel turned the last corner. The ladder came into view. "Go, Leia," she cried. "Climb." Leia hesitated. "I'm too weak." Hazel pushed her up. "Use my back. You're not staying down here." With a grunt, Leia pulled herself onto the ladder. Hazel looked back. Figure moved in the shadows. Close. She shoved the flashlight into her bag and scrambled up the ladder. Ranger met them at the top, barking like he was ready for war. Hazel pulled Leia out, slammed the trapdoor shut, and shoved the crate over it. Then she collapsed beside Ranger, holding Leia tight, heart racing. They were together. They had each other. But the man in green was still down there. And now, he knew they'd found her. The crate wouldn't hold long. Hazel knew it the second she heard the first thud against the trapdoor. It was soft, like a warning. "I'm coming." She grabbed Leia's wrist. "We can't stay here." Ranger was already pacing, growling low, his nose twitching with every shift in the floorboards. His eyes locked on Hazel's. "Where do we go?" Leia asked, voice still weak. Hazel pulled her toward the door. "Anywhere but here." Another bang came from beneath. Then a groan, the trapdoor straining against the wood. Hazel flung the cabin door open. "Run." They bolted into the forest. The air outside had changed. Smoke, thick. The sky had turned orange and black, and flames crackled through the trees in the distance. Hazel coughed. "It's burning." Ranger ran ahead, barking sharply, clearing a path between the trees. Hazel dragged Leia behind her, feet slipping in the ash-covered dirt. "Don't stop," she shouted. Behind them came voices, shouts, fast footsteps. They were being chased. Hazel pulled harder. "We're almost there." "Just keep going." A branch snapped behind her. Then another voice, close, too close. "There they are." Leia cried out, stumbling. Hazel turned to lift her. But a man leaped out from the smoke. He lunged at Hazel. Arms reaching, then Ranger crashed into him like a lightning bolt. His growl turned into a roar. His teeth sank deep into the man's arm. The scream that followed cut through the smoke like glass. The man dropped, thrashing. Ranger didn't let go. Hazel screamed, "Ranger, stop." "Come on." The others were closing in. She could hear them. Ranger finally released the man and limped back to Hazel, blood on his snout. Leia stared at him in shock. "He saved you." Hazel grabbed her hand. Again. The forest lit up brighter. Flames jumped between trees, crackling like thunder. Ranger barked once and took off. Leading the way, Hazel and Leia followed, dodging branches, ducking low through thick smoke. "You're bleeding," Leia gasped, pointing at Hazel's arm. "I don't care," Hazel shouted. "We have to move." They ran through a patch of burning brush. Heat licked at Hazel's legs. Leia tripped and screamed. Hazel turned, grabbed her, pulled her up again. "I've got you," she said. "I'm not leaving you." Ranger barked ahead, a warning. Another figure appeared in the firelight. Hazel froze, but Ranger ran straight at him. The man didn't even have time to speak. One snarl from Ranger and he was gone, back into the trees. The fire spread faster now, chasing them from every side. Hazel's lungs burned. "Where's the road?" "Ranger, where are we going?" Ranger paused at a clearing and turned toward them. Barking, Hazel spotted a break in the trees. There, she and Liar ran, side by side now. Ranger limped ahead, pushing through the smoke like it didn't touch him. A loud crack sounded behind them. A tree split and collapsed. They didn't turn around. Hazel's vision blurred from the heat and smoke, but then light, clear sky, a dirt road. They made it. Hazel dropped to her knees, gasping. Rangers stood beside them, chest heaving, fur singed but eyes sharp. Leah coughed and hugged Hazel. "You came for me." Hazel held her tight. "I'll never leave you again." Then she turned to Ranger, tears in her eyes. "You brought us through fire." He blinked slowly and stepped forward, resting his head against her shoulder. And behind them, the forest burned everything they left behind. Smoke still lingered in the air. Trees behind them crackled and hissed as the fire kept moving. But up ahead, the sky was lightening. Morning was coming. Hazel's legs felt like they were made of stone. Every step burned. Every breath hurt. But she didn't stop. Leah clung to her back, arms locked round her neck. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I can walk if you want." "No," Hazel gasped. "We're too close. Don't stop now." Ranger walked ahead of them, head low, tail dragging. Blood stained his shoulder, and he limped worse than before. But he didn't fall. Not once. Hazel called out, "You okay?" He didn't look back. He just kept walking. She blinked hard, trying to see through the smoke and dust. "Please let there be a road. Please." The forest was thinning. The ground turned from dirt to gravel. Then, up ahead, a straight line cut through the trees. A road. Hazel's voice cracked. "We made it." Ranger stepped out onto the road first. His body wobbled. He paused, breathing hard. Hazel rushed behind him, carrying Leah. Stumbling the last few feet, they reached the edge of the road. Just as a low rumble filled the air. A truck. Hazel waved her arms wildly. "Here, please, stop." The truck skidded to a halt. A man jumped out, followed by two more. One wore a vest marked Search Patrol. He shouted, "We found them. Over here." Hazel dropped to her knees. "Help him. Help Ranger." One of the men ran to Ranger, who had collapsed onto his side, panting hard. Hazel cried out, "He's hurt. He saved us." Another man knelt beside her. "Are you Hazel Carter?" She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "And this is my sister. Her name's Liar. She's alive." Liar opened her eyes slowly. "We got out." Hazel clutched her tighter. "They were taking girls. They had a place underground. They left her there." The patrolman looked stunned. "We'll take you to safety. You're safe now." "No," Hazel sobbed. "Not yet. Ranger, he's not okay." The medic knelt by the dog, gently checking his wounds. "He's lost blood," the medic said. "But he's still breathing. We can help him." Hazel crawled to Ranger's side and pressed her forehead to his. "You did it," she whispered. "You didn't give up on us." He gave a soft, weak huff, barely lifting his head. She looked at the patrolman. "Promise me you'll save him." The man nodded. "We will, I swear." As they lifted Ranger onto a blanket and gently slid him into the back of the truck, Hazel sat with her sister in her lap, holding her tight. The search team looked at them with disbelief, but no one asked more questions. Not yet. The truck door closed. Hazel whispered into Liar's ear, "We're going home." All of us. Ranger's breathing slowed, but it didn't stop. And Hazel held on to that. The hospital smelled too clean, the lights were too bright, and Hazel hated every second without Ranger beside her. They had put him in a separate room. They said he needed stitches, fluids, rest. She'd begged to stay, but they wouldn't let her. So she sat in the hallway, arms wrapped around her knees, staring at the door like it might open any second. Leah was down the hall in another room, recovering. Doctors said she was lucky, dehydrated, bruised, underweight, but alive and safe. Now, but Hazel couldn't think about anything else except the dog who had carried them through fire. A nurse walked by and tried to offer her crackers. Hazel shook her head. "I'm not hungry." An hour passed, maybe 2, then finally the door opened. The vet stepped out, wiping his hands. Hazel jumped to her feet. "Is he okay?" The man smiled gently. "He's a fighter. He's resting. Now, he lost a lot of blood, but you got him here just in time." Hazel's eyes filled. "Can I see him?" He nodded. "Only for a minute." She rushed into the room. Ranger was lying on a blanket, a bandage wrapped around his shoulder and another along his side. An IV tube ran from his leg. She dropped beside him. "Hey, buddy." His eyes fluttered open, weak, but there. Hazel smiled through tears. "You scared me." She placed her hand on his chest. "They all keep asking how I made it out." "How?" "I found my sister. I keep telling them it wasn't me. It was him." The vet stepped in. "You know, we've had dozens of calls since the news broke. About other missing kids. Other names scratched into that cabin wall." Hazel looked at him. "You believe me now?" He nodded. "We do. You started something." Reporters had already started crowding the parking lot. Microphones, cameras, headlines, flashing, "Missing sisters found after week in woods." But Hazel didn't want the attention. She just wanted Ranger to wag his tail again. Later that day, Leah was wheeled into the room beside her. She looked better, already clean, fed, warm. Her voice still came out soft. "They said we're going home tomorrow." Hazel nodded. "It won't feel like home without him." Leah smiled. "He'll come with us, right?" Hazel looked at Ranger. "If he wants to." That night, while everyone else slept, Hazel stayed by his side. Her hand never left his fur. "You don't have to protect me anymore," she whispered. "We made it. We're safe now. But I still need you." Ranger let out a slow breath. Hazel leaned in close. "You're my hero, and I love you." Just before dawn, Ranger moved. It was small, but his tail, it wagged. Once, Hazel gasped. "There you are." And for the first time since they escaped the fire, she let herself believe everything was going to be okay. The sun shone bright over the town square. Banners hung from the buildings. People gathered shoulder to shoulder, phones raised, cameras flashing. Hazel didn't care about any of it. She only looked at Ranger Dot. He walked beside her, slow, careful, his legs still wrapped but healing. Every step looked like it took effort, but he never stopped. Just like before, the mayor stood on a stage, microphone in hand. His voice echoed through the crowd. "Today, we honor bravery. Today, we honor loyalty. And today, we honor a dog who gave everything to bring to sisters home." The crowd clapped. Hazel didn't clap. She rested her hand on Ranger's back, rubbing gently. People had asked for interviews. Reporters had begged for her story. Hazel turned most of them away. This moment wasn't for them. The mayor stepped forward, holding a small box. "And now," he said, "it is my great honor to present Ranger with this medal for heroism." on behalf of the town and on behalf of every family still searching for answers. He knelt in front of Ranger and gently pinned the medal to his collar, a silver tag shaped like a star. Hazel knelt beside them, her eyes filled with tears. "He's more than a hero," she said softly. "He's family." The mayor nodded. "I think everyone here would agree." The crowd burst into applause again. Hazel wrapped her arms around Ranger's neck. He leaned into her, his tail wagging slowly. She whispered into his ear, "You followed me into hell, and you brought me home." Ranger turned his head and licked her hand. She looked into his eyes, those steady, silent eyes that had never left her side. They didn't need words. He had always understood. Lyra stood nearby, her hand resting on her heart. "He never gave up on you," she said. Hazel smiled. "He never gave up on either of us." A few feet away, cameras flashed again. But this time, Hazel didn't mind, because this wasn't about a headline. This was about truth. She stood, Ranger beside her, and faced the town. She raised her voice. "There are still names on those walls, still kids who were taken. We got out, but not everyone has." The crowd went quiet. Hazel continued, "We need to keep looking. We can't forget them." A woman in the front row nodded, tears in her eyes. A man clapped slowly. Then more joined in. Hazel looked down at Ranger. "This is just the start." He lifted his head proudly, the medal catching the sun. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers, stories, and a world that finally saw the truth, Hazel knew one thing. She wasn't that lost girl anymore. She had a voice, and she had him. Did this story touch your heart? Give it a thumbs up, share it around, and drop your location in the comments.